if Wyndham Clark wins back-to-back U.S. Opens, I'll cut off my testicles on live air. It's just not going to happen.
Mayo experience.
Mayo experience. Mayo experience. Mayo experience. Experience.
Welcome to the Pat Mayo Experience presented by Underdog Fantasy, U.S. Open player by player breakdown. Are we going to get to all 156 players? Absolutely not. You don't need to know about everyone in the field. We'll try to do like the top 30, top 40 or so in the odds boards right now to see if we're in, if we're out. And I had to bring someone in who's going to provide a little bit of pushback on this one. Matt Vincenzi, my man, I am looking forward to this. I've been stewing all day waiting to talk to you.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I've been doing all U.S. Open stuff, kind of trying to avoid Memorial talk. I'm just looking so forward to the U.S. Open, looking forward to this show all week, so I'll make sure I'm ready with all the stats and info ready to go.
Well, I just want to let everyone know you're watching this before the conclusion of Memorial, so we don't know what has happened at Memorial, although Matt probably does. He just won like 25K or something last week, so he might be from the future. I don't know. Congratulations once again on your big score, by the way.
Thank you. I needed it. Had a bunch of close calls over the last month or so, like second, third, fourth. So finally got one over the line. Although Bob Mack definitely made it interesting towards the end. And kind of on my show before, I said I don't really have any reason why I like Bob Mack. Just I have a weird gut feeling he could win a Canadian Open, and turned out to be true.
Yeah, when I went back and looked at all of the different links courses that correlated with Hamilton and Wentworth, he was like the €1 guy I didn't take because I'm an absolute moron. I ended up with Victor Perez instead. Obviously, he didn't win. But enough about the Canadian Open. What I need to tell you right now, I mean, I'm not going to give away 25K, but there is the ability to get into draw for some cold hard cash, some Fantasy National annual memberships, and to get in on potentially a split of $50,000 because our good friend at shipitnation.com, Tower Tambolini, at Toe Tag and Tambo, has said he has 2 live entries still in the Fantasy Golf World Championship on DraftKings. And if he gets one or both to the final, whatever the best scoring team is, he's going to give away 5% of that. And if he wins, that's $1 million. So he'd be giving away $50,000. Now you're probably saying, Pat, how do I get my hands on some of this money? Well, I got tons of answers for you. The thing you can do that will get you the most ballots in both my draws and get you into Tambo's draw is go make a first-time deposit at UnderdogFantasy.com using code Mayo. You can get a deposit bonus of up to $250, but hell, just throw on $10 if you want to test the waters a little bit. We're doing a lot more underdog content these days in terms of the fantasy pick'em game, and hopefully for the U.S. Open, I'll have a very special announcement either on Sunday or Monday regarding the pick'em game for the U.S. Open. So you're gonna want to have an underdog account to take advantage of that. All right, code Mayo, get your ballots in the draw. The other way to do that, besides like telling a friend, although I can't really verify that, although sharing around the show, helping us out in big weeks like this is paramount to this show growing and us being able to come to you for free all the time. But what you can do to seriously help and get ballots into the draw for the cash giveaways and everything like that, subscribe, rate, and review the Pat Mayo Experience audio podcast. You do it on Apple, boom, you got ballots. You do it on Spotify, you get more ballots into the draw for everything. So go do those things. That's how you can help us out during U.S. Open week. And Matt, if people are watching this before its release date, it's because they found the secret link in the free newsletter. You got to subscribe to that.
That's right. Yeah, all that sounds great.
Yeah, so you need to go do that too. So you need to do the Apple, you need to do the Spotify, you go deposit, and then you go sign up for the free newsletter. The free newsletter is available down in the description, so I'll wait here while you do that, okay?
Yeah, I have my own promo code, but I'm going to use yours because that's how much I love you.
Thank you so much. Okay, let's get into this. Pinehurst, we haven't seen it since 2014. Party Marty Keimer won by a touchdown and a 2-point conversion. Or maybe it was just an extra point. He either won by 8 or won by 7. I think he finished at -9. Then there was only 2 other players who actually broke par that week. Do you expect even par to be a top 5 score this week?
A great question. I mean, history would say yes. There's only been 4 players under par in the last 3 editions of the tournament. I think I'm going to say no, only because I think the winning score might be 4 or 5, but you might get a couple guys at 1, 2, 3 under. So I think even does not break the top 5, although I do think it's going to play tough, firm, and fast. But these players are just so good, and they're getting better, and the equipment's getting better. I do think it'll be tough, but we haven't really seen a U.S. Open, worse than 6 under in the last 5 or 6 years. And I know this course is a different animal, but I'm going to guess there'll be 5 or 6 players under par.
I'll have a complete course breakdown with Keith Stewart coming out tomorrow. If you want to know more about the course, he's been on the grounds, he's seen it. And we talk a little bit about comp courses. And I revealed this on the Memorial Show, that just scanning the leaderboard from 2014, it was crazy how many former Sawgrass winners finished inside the top 10. Is that a course that you'd be looking at as well this week?
Yeah, I heard you talk about that, and I thought it was really interesting, and I kind of looked into it myself, and you were right. It was all over the leaderboard. And I think the thing that resonates most is the fact that you don't have to be crazy long, but really long players can do well there too. There's a bunch of different ways to do it. And I kind of watched a couple of videos on Pinehurst, and the more I dug into it, the more I kind of realized that there's so many different ways to go around Pinehurst, and it depends how you attack the course. And I think Sawgrass is similar in a way.
So in terms of skill sets, is there a particular skill set that you, obviously we're going to have players of different skill sets on the betting card, and guys that we like and guys that we don't like for, bias reasons, skill reasons, whatever it might be. Can't like everyone. That's the point of the show. But is there a particular skill set that you would be looking at to say, hey, if this type of player can do all their things at their peak, they're going to have a very live chance of winning?
Yeah, I would say creativity, because this golf course is going to ask you to make a bunch of different types of shots. Around the green, you can see guys go high, guys go low, some Texas wedges. Off the tee, you could see players hit driver on some holes, but with a firm and fast run out, you're not going to have to. You could club down, get a lot of run out in the fairways, and still have a short iron into these greens. So I don't think, the last 8 U.S. Opens, we always say long and straight, long and straight, long and straight. And that works anywhere, and it might work here, and I'm sure it will for some players, but I don't think the shorter players are ruled out relative to past U.S. Opens.
It's funny, the last time that I kind of used that logic for a tournament, I ended up with the guy in second, the guy in third, the guy in sixth, the guy in sixth, and the guy who tied for, where's Aaron Rye here? He finished somewhere up there as well. It was at Royal St. George's in terms of the Open Championship, when a guy who I consider to be one of the least creative players, Collin Morikawa, ended up winning. But I think if I had to have the prototypical skill set for Pinehurst, it's what Morikawa does at his best. Hit it above average distance, be completely accurate, dialed in with the long irons, and don't be abysmal around the greens, which he was that week. And we see it every now and then from him. And that would be sort of the, working backwards, the skill set that I want. Unfortunately, I don't know if there's anyone on tour right now that kind of matches up perfectly with that.
Yeah, I mean, I would push back and say you were right the first time on Royal St. George's, and then that was what the skill set required should be. But the fact is the weather didn't come, and that thing played like a dome. And there's probably not a better dome golfer in the world than Collin Morikawa, because he's so precise. If that played like a real Open Championship, I don't think he would have won. So I thought that was almost a little fluky in terms of, there was no crowd either. So it was almost like a dome the way they were playing that year. And this time, I do worry about Morikawa's lack of, not that he's a lack of creativity, but when you think of creative shot makers, moving the ball hard one way or the other, around the green, crafty, he's not the guy that comes to mind.
See, he isn't for me either, which makes it even weirder that he's had so much success at Augusta over the years, which is a very similar thing that we talk about there. Maybe when pressed to do these things, he can actually do them. Yeah,
that definitely could be true. I kind of like the Augusta crossover just because it seems like around the greens you have those options of going low where you might not in a course that has rough all over the place. With no rough here, I mean, that's going to be a similarity to Augusta, but no rough off the fairways, no rough off the greens. And you're going to get some weird, funky lies if you miss the fairways.
Yeah, one of the biggest things that I think you can look into this week, and there's nothing you can really do for it or against it, is even when Martin Keimer won, he had an incredible amount of luck throughout the course of the week. Like, he never really drew a bad lie when he got into a waste area or had to hit off the mud from behind the greens once it ran out through the short grass. And just you saw like Tiger ended up with or Rory ended up with some really terrible lies. Brooks was somewhat in contention that year too, and then he ends up trying just a terrible lie where it's like behind a stick when he hits it into the waste area, and there's nothing you can really do. You kind of have to take your medicine and go on. But every time that Keimer finally got into trouble, it actually didn't turn out to be trouble at all. And when you have these waste areas, which are basically sand areas, something like we saw at Whistling Straits, but much more devastating, and it's just off the fairway, would you look at sand saves or sand play, or is it just too funky to even try to look at that?
Yeah, I mean, I would look at it a little bit, and I did look at it in preparation for this. They probably play very similar to fairway bunkers. And it was kind of interesting. Sometimes you think the better players are better from the rough, when in reality, it turns out that the best players in the world are better when they're getting, these lies that aren't in the rough. Everyone, the rough is a great equalizer. So, if you can hack it out, you can hack it out. There's no real difference between player A and player B. Whereas these lies, I think the cream may rise to the top because it's going to ask you to make shots to get out of trouble instead of just hacking it out.
Okay, well, enough of the preamble. Let's get into the good stuff. Scottie Scheffler is the betting favorite at the U.S. Open. He is 4-1 currently, and obviously these odds are going to change over the next few days or so, but there's no reason for him not to be the favorite. I don't know about the local police department in Pinehurst, but they might let Scottie be on his way. He could probably stay at the resort. There's a huge complex there where he can stay, so he never even has to go off the ground. So no worries about getting there too early this time around. If I had to draw up a golf course, this is the perfect golf course for Scottie Scheffler, which leaves me at real odds of what I want to do this week.
I mean, what can you do? I mean, you'd make a pretty sizable bet to bet a guy at 4-1, and then that's all you got. And, if he gets arrested again, then, you're screwed. But, yeah, it's hard to argue with the fact that he's the guy to beat this week. But I have a player kind of towards the top that I think has a better chance than him this week. And I'm going to go on a limb and say Scottie doesn't win this event.
I mean, the betting odds would suggest that, even though he is a 4-1 favorite, that he would not end up winning this week. But I just, the way that I see him, he's won back-to-back Players' Championships, obviously. He's on the best run since probably heyday Tiger at this point. And then when you start thinking about the creativity that goes into some of these shots, where he doesn't actually have to flop the ball up, he can bank it into the bank and let it roll up. He can putt from off the green. And when I think about long and straight, I mean, that's Scottie. It's going to be so tough for someone to try to run him down.
Yeah, I mean, I would ask you this. So prior to that arrest, we saw probably 50 straight rounds where he did not seem to be human. Since then, we've seen 2 rounds where he really didn't look like the player that we've grown accustomed to seeing. That round when Eckroat won. Davis Riley in the final round of the Charles
Davis
Schwab.
Riley.
Yeah, he looked completely off, and then obviously that first round after the arrest, which is more understandable. And it's just so hard to go on these sustained runs for year, 18 months. Every single time we think a player is invincible, they find a way to take one step backwards and they show us that they're human again. And he's showing some signs of that now. So I guess part of it is me hoping, because I'm not going to be betting on him, is that maybe he does come back down to earth. But I agree. Golf course makes a lot of sense for him. Great shot maker. The Augusta thing we talked about, the Players thing we talked about, he's going to be tough to beat. But, winning 2 majors in a year is pretty rare, especially 2 out of 3. So if he does it, he's kind of in that rarefied air again.
Rory is actually second on the betting board right now at 11-1, coming off a nice result in Canada, but he didn't quite have his best stuff. Obviously, he won the team event, and then he won at Quail Hollow, where he went Rory nuclear for 9 holes. I just don't see this being a great course for him. I'm out on Rory for Pinehurst.
So I'm the opposite. I love Rory. I think he's the guy to beat at the top, and I think for a couple of reasons. One, he talked earlier this year about how he feels like his skill set now, he's more suited for a firm and fast test, and you might not think that makes sense for him because he's won in a bunch of soft golf courses. All his majors have kind of been lower scores, but I think 2024 Rory is not the same as 2014 Rory, and I think a big thing for him this week or next week is going to be the fact that the pressure is not as much on him, right? At the Masters, there's always that career Grand Slam pressure. And then Valhalla, 10 years since his last major, and the last one he won was at that course. So everyone thinks he's going to perform, not to mention he's coming off a dominant win at Quail Hollow. And this is the first time this year where he's going into a major, not under the radar because he'll never be under the radar, but he doesn't feel like he has a huge target on his back. All the people are talking about Scheffler, understandably so. I think Pinehurst is a sneaky good course for Rory. Talk about the Players, right? He's won the Players. He is good around the greens. He is good from the bunker. So I think Rory actually, and the U.S. Open history is completely insane. The last five starts in the U.S. Open, he's gone T9, T8, T5, second. So he's progressively gotten better each of the last 5 starts and has not finished outside of the top 10. So I think he's going to be the guy who's around.
See, yes, he did win the Players' Championship, but it was a lot like when Phil won the Players' Championship. Like, everything coalesced that week. He hit his upside, and it was a softer, higher or lower scoring type players than we see in some years. He only has the one top 10 in the past 10 years, and it was that win at that course. I just worry about his accuracy at the moment, and maybe he can dial it back and doesn't need to go full rip with the driver the entire time. But when I took a look at the stats from 2014, it shocked me that obviously Keimer is a very accurate player, and that's really how he got around the course. But he also was way up in driving distance. And I was trying to think to myself, like, how is that even possible that he rated out amongst like DJ and Brooks Koepka in terms of driving distance? Because those guys were all inside the top 10 as well. And then it kind of struck me like, oh yeah, because he hit every fairway. The ball rolled out for him. He didn't just end up in the sand and the ball stopped. It took me a second for those two things to click in my mind, that if Rory doesn't try to dial it back a little bit, and even, it's funny with Rory, because when he does try to dial it back, I find he actually gets a bit wayward. Like when he pulls out a wood instead of a driver off the tee to make the very sensible play, all of a sudden he's like in the middle of nowhere, because it's not what he does. He kind of needs to grip it and rip it. And even though he's been playing so well recently, he hasn't been hitting a ton of fairways. He's just been playing at courses, and you don't think about Quail Hollow in that way, but you can play from the rough at Quail Hollow. In fact, a lot of people play from the rough at Quail Hollow. That's one of the protections of it, that I think the premium on accuracy this week would be my pushback against Rory.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. Another thing I like about him is the apex height. He's top 5 in the field, hits a high ball. I think we want players who hit high balls with their irons, because I think the green's going to be incredibly difficult to hold. And then you're going to inevitably miss some greens. I think you can get up and down from a lot of places. I do agree. The accuracy is a little bit scary, but I'm hoping he has another good week this week. Not great. If he wins this week, he's not winning next week. We've seen that happen the last 10 times he's won and then gone into a major. But I do think if he plays well, figures it out, and he said he found something in his swing on Friday at the Canadian Open, and then over the weekend he played much better. So I just have a feeling about Rory at Pinehurst.
I like it. And listen, the gut play worked out for Bobby Mack. Maybe the gut play will work out for Rory. So you're going to bet Rory at 11-1, or maybe find a better number out there?
I got a 12 a couple weeks ago. And I was kind of looking at that. And then, I think I don't love going to the top of the board, and I know you don't all the time either. But I think if there is one event you should do it, it's probably a U.S. Open or a difficult major, because someone from that top 3 or 4, 5 is going to be there. You're going to have to beat them. And I actually had a future on a guy who we'll talk about, I'm sure, soon.
Is it because he's not? Is it because he's not in the tournament? Is that one of the guys?
No, not him. It's because I got a great number on this other player that allows me to fit a 12 with this player, and I'm happy to take that kind of duo.
I think that Pinehurst, and I mean, it's not like Martin Keimer was some nobody when he won. It was his second major. He had won the Players earlier that year. It made a lot of sense, actually. I think he went off at 45-1 when he won, so he was in that next range of players. But I do think that Pinehurst, because of both the luck factor that can come into it, accuracy over distance, although distance does mean a ton. I'm not trying to say that distance doesn't mean anything. It does mean a ton, but it's just going to be hard to have too much distance when you're playing from the waist bunkers the entire time. That I think this course is weirdly set up for a long shot to be very competitive. Whether or not they win, I do think you can take some shots down the board here.
I completely agree. And some names popped out and just the things I was looking at for some long shots.
Lucas Glover.
Yeah, win is one. He makes sense. He wasn't one of them. One of them I was thinking of was Cam Davis, because of what he did in the qualifier. Apex height I was talking about, firm and fast rankings, Donald Ross. He's great on, so he was kind of the name that came to mind for a long shot. But yeah, winning, I'm not sure, but I do think, it's not going to be that leaderboard that we've seen with studs from 1 through 8. There's definitely going to be some shorter hitter, maybe some older players on the list there.
Xander Schauffele is next up. He is 12-1 at the U.S. Open, coming off a major victory. I am watching with much curiosity to see what he does at Memorial in his first start since winning a major. Obviously, the stats check out. There's a big 3, it really feels like right now when you get to the betting board, because there does seem to be a gap between Rory, Xander, and Scottie, and then the next set of guys. You can put like 7 of them all in a bunch, be it the LIV guys and then the next tier of the PGA guys, but Xander has sort of separated himself. We have seen a lot of this type of player, someone who waited. Sergio is really the one that pops to my mind, that he had played so well. He had played so well in major championships. He was a gagger for so long. It finally happens for him, and what happens? Dude sucks at majors for like 4 years. I could see that happening to Xander.
I could definitely see it too, and I would argue that I am a spurned Bryson better from the PGA, but he didn't really have any opportunities to blow that thing. And I think if you gave him one, he might have. His last 2 tee shots he hit left. The last one was right on the edge of the bunker. Made a great shot to get out of there, but the fairways were wide, the conditions were soft. It was playing easy. If that's a firm and fast, and you pull one left like he did, that thing's behind a tree or in a waste area or somewhere like that. So I think it did work in his favor that he was playing with a lead on a soft golf course that played easier than any major we can remember. It would not surprise me either. Like, I think the margins in golf are thin. Like, from a loser to a winner, all it takes is one bounce here, one bounce there. But it definitely would not surprise me, like you said, if he kind of reverts back.
So I built out a Pinehurst model. I'm still tweaking it, and I'll have that on the show over the weekend and try to look really in depth at some guys that pop up just based on the weightings that I ended up doing it. But I think for the first time ever, the top 3 players on the odds board are the top 3 players in the model. I don't think that's ever happened before.
Yeah, it makes tons of sense. And I've been kind of looking at a couple categories too. And I'm waiting for the approach and off the tee and those kind of more relevant around the green stats from after Memorial, because I think it is probably going to be pretty important, especially the fact that I think it's going to play firm and fast this week at Memorial. So, but yeah, there are a lot of things that I'm looking at aside from that are kind of long term and can't be quantified just from 1 week. But yeah, those 3 are definitely separated from the pack. They're the 3 who are playing the best, and you could argue that none of the other players are even playing well at all.
Yeah, the only one that's really playing well is Morikawa, it seems. He's playing well, he's playing like, Bryson is as well, but we'll see how he ends up. Because, I like that LIV has started to schedule their events the week before majors. I think it helps them out. Although, weirdly, it hasn't helped them out outside of Bryson so far in majors. That Jon Rahm is next up on our list because he is the next betting favorite in the field. It just hasn't been Rahm's year. It really feels like this move to LIV has affected him severely in terms of what his upside is. He almost seems like a lost man, still caught in between both tours and not really even a full-fledged LIV member. That's just how it feels from the way he talks.
Yeah, I would agree with that. He still seems to be holding out hope that he can still play on the PGA Tour when something gets settled. And, my opinion is that when he signed his contract with LIV, he was, 1, told that something will be done soon, which we all believed was the case. And 2, I believed in his own mind, he thought he was the guy who was going to bring both tours together because, how can the PGA Tour continue to lose all these players and still remain afloat? And he thought he would be the needle that moved, that kind of brought them both together and said, all right, let's get to the table and hammer something out. That didn't happen. I think that kind of took him off guard a little bit. And I think he doesn't like being not liked. He mentioned being at Augusta and feeling like everyone was kind of treating him like shit. And he didn't like that at all. And then going into the PGA, people were like, hey, 20-1, I might get on that. And I never for a second thought about it because he just seemed so off mentally at the Masters. But then you'll have LIV fans, the diehards who are saying he's playing great. He's second on the season standings. He has the 8th, blah, blah, blah. I don't care about that. This is supposedly, in my opinion, was before he left the best player in the world, right up there with Scheffler. And I had him above Scheffler for a long time. Don't tell me he can go to LIV and being second on the season standings is telling me he's having a good year. He's not.
I'm out on Rahm here, and there's going to be a DraftKings case when that comes around. Like, oh, no one's using Rahm because I don't imagine that he's going to be a very popular player this week. Just remind me not to get sucked in, even if he wins in Houston this week.
Yeah, I'm not going to either. One thing I will say is I did a little last 36, and obviously it's from mostly majors, firm and fast ranking. He did rank out first on the firm and fast. We talked about Masters. He's won that. He's been good at the Players. I do think golf course fit-wise, he's fine, but I don't think mentally he's ready to go and win a major.
Well, it's funny because after he won the Masters, and although it was his second major championship, he had the second at the Open to Brian Harman last year, but that was a backdoor second tied with 5 guys. Like, he was never in contention in that tournament at all. He ended up losing by 5. That's really his only like great. I mean, he came. It was a lot like his 10th at LA Country Club last year. Like, he was never in that. He had a good final round and ended up coming in 10th. He hasn't really competed since he won the green jacket.
No, not at all. Even on LIV, I mean, the people look at the finishes, but I liked him in Singapore, and I watched that event, and it seemed like a perfect Jon Rahm course. And every time he'd start to make a move, he would, spray one left, go in the water. He just does not seem like himself.
Yeah, it seems like a mental thing, because even watching Mayakoba at the beginning of the year when it was Neiman and Sergio in that playoff, like, that was Rahm's tournament to win. He just started missing 3-foot putts.
Yeah, something's off. Something is off, and I refuse to believe otherwise until I see a true sign of that. And the true sign of that is not the fact that, he comes in 8th place in a LIV event.
Is there a number, if it got to it, where you'd be like, oh, okay, would it be 30?
I guess, but I mean, every time that conversation comes up, those are players that I'm not interested in betting. Just like at the PGA, everyone was saying the same thing about the 20. I can't believe Rahm's 20. He's the second best player. He should be 8, 10, 12. Now he's 20. If you don't think he's going to win, and if he's not in the mental space to win, he's not gonna. This isn't like an event on the PGA Tour where we see, all right, a guy's kind of out of form. JT's down to 30-1 this week. This is a U.S. Open. Who goes to the U.S. Open out of form and wins? It just doesn't happen. So no, I'm just not betting him.
Viktor Hovland is also 16-1. Viktor gets his groove back just a little bit, and all of a sudden, everyone is lined up to bet Viktor Hovland. I don't like Viktor at this course. I don't care what you have to do from off the greens. If it's not thick rough from off the greens that you have to chip in, dude's not hitting every green in regulation. He's going to make a mess of some of this around the green play, and just I can't be there for that. If he hits his absolute apex and his peak, he is perfect for this place. If he can get away with missing a green and actually getting it up and down, or he runs such a hot putter that when he chips it to 14 feet, he makes those putts. It's in the range of outcomes. It's just a very tiny range over at the right-hand side that I just got to be out. I love him at Memorial. I bet him at Memorial. Don't like him at Pinehurst.
Yeah, I mostly agree. I mean, I think he's the type of player, especially the last run of majors that he's had. He's involved in just about every major besides the one recently when he was completely out of form, but gets back in form. Now he's contending at the PGA again. I think he's going to win a major very, very soon. This doesn't feel like the right one to me either. It just requires too much from around the greens. And I think he can get away with some shots around the green, like when it's not the most important thing or one of the most important things. Bunker play, he's typically been pretty bad throughout his career. So I think, he can get away with it. He can piece it together and maybe even gain a couple strokes. But I think when you have to make creative around the green shots in order to get up and down to win a golf tournament, and I think that's going to be happening here. I like him at Troon. I think it's a kind of more target iron player course. This is just not the right one for me. I agree.
So even to look at it a little bit more in depth, because I'm going to start piecing together some different courses to try to build out what I have as my finalized mixed condition model. If you want to jump onto Fantasy National, I know I'm giving away 2 annual memberships. If you go to fantasynational.com/Mayo right now, you get 20% off any of the membership levels, and you're still eligible to win the free year. You get your $8 back or whatever it is for the week, and boom, you end up with a free year out of it. So go do that right now. If you want to do the walkthrough with me, build your own models, research everything that Matt is talking about in terms of firm and fast, and go look at some of these historic stats. But I mentioned Sawgrass, and the thing that reminds me of Sawgrass the most around the greens is actually Heritage, where Stuart Sink was able to putt from off those greens and absolutely dominate my poor Morikawa bet a few years ago. It was just like, well, there are different ways that you can slice this from around the greens, and those do take a lot of creative play. Viktor has played at Heritage twice. He's lost a stroke and 1.2 strokes at Heritage, and then we get him to Sawgrass. He's played there 4 times, never gained strokes around the green, lost 0.7, 6.9, 2.7, and 2.6. These tight surfaces just are not his thing.
Yeah, I wonder how Stuart Sink did at the 2014 U.S. Open. That would kind of bring everything full circle. If he did good in that, then I think that puts everything together and makes it a great argument.
He was 13 over par, T54.
It's still going. Just forget I said that. Edit that out. Yeah.
He made this is the hardest cut to make in all of golf. He made it. He was there.
Yeah, And you could probably say a 50-year-old Stuart Sink isn't the same as he was in 2014. I mean, I'm sure his game has adapted and changed, and he gained a bunch of distance going to that Heritage event too. But yeah, I agree too. When you have all those choices, you mentioned it. The times that he's contended is when it's been thick rough. You kind of learn that shot. And I heard a pro recently talking about, I forget who it was, about how those around the green shots when it's rough and they don't like playing off tight lies, the rough is so much easier for them because it's much more predictable and they practice it all the time. It's a very simple shot for them. So I do think it requires an extra little bit of around the green skill when the lies get tight.
Yeah, and even to circle back to that 2014 leaderboard, like there's different pockets of players who are in there that you're like, all right, you know, this makes a lot of sense for this guy or that guy. I mean, Keimer, I don't think pulled out a wedge around the green the entire week. He just putted from off the green the entire week, which was the savviest move of all time. Now, he hit an exceptional amount of greens of regulation as well, which can go hand in hand. If you put the putter in his hand 50 times, you know, it's probably not going to go well every single time. But he was able to manage that really well. And then you see Stenson. Like, Stenson sucks from off the green, but I believe he also putted from off the green a lot of the time as well. Like, he just took that out of play for him, really overlooking a lot of his downside. But then you get to this little pocket of guys that like tied for 12th or 9th or beyond that. Todd, accuracy, short game putting. Furyk, accuracy, good with his irons, but short game and putting. Kuchar, the same. Marcel Siem, the same. Kevin Na, the same. Brandt Snedeker, the same. It's like saying, like, when we get to Patrick, I mean, Patrick Reed's not in the field, but if he was in the field, be like, yeah, this is a great Patrick Reed course.
Oh, definitely. Creativity. And I have a couple guys who I think fit that really well. A little bit, you know, not too far away, but a little bit farther away down the board. And like you mentioned earlier, it just keeps, everything does point back to the fact that there will be some shorter accuracy players. So what we want to think about, and what I've been trying to think about, is who are the current day versions of the Cooch and Snedeker and those guys?
Denny? Taylor Moore, I think, is actually one of them.
Yeah, Denny makes a lot of sense. I guess Todd 2.0, he might still be there. He's still playing all right.
Yeah, Aaron Rye is weirdly kind of this guy too. It's just he can't putt.
Yeah, we want the ones who, the mid iron, short iron, and who also can putt. Denny is definitely one of them. I'm sure there's going to be more too that we'll think about.
Well, I mean, spoiler alert, I've already recorded with Keith, and one thing that he had made mention about these greens, like, everyone just is under this assumption that someone took a bowl, turned it over, and those are the greens. And that's kind of what they're like, but they more reject approach shots. And he was like, they're actually not that difficult to putt on. Like, once you get to the right surface, they're kind of flat. Like, the good putters putt well here.
Yeah, that makes sense. And that makes sense as to why the putters off the green will work, because you don't, usually when guys have to go up top, it's because they're trying to eliminate the break. So if they're relatively straight and easy once you're on there, you could probably, that's why the Texas wedge is effective.
I mean, are you going to tell me like Spieth is a really good play this week?
No.
So everything that we have said so far, I mean, one of the biggest predictors of U.S. Open success is U.S. Open history. And going back and just see the same guys at the top of the leaderboard every year, like, once you get good at USGA setups, you tend to remain really good at USGA setups. And this guy has won a U.S. Open, but everything that we've talked through so far does not seem all that great for Bryson.
Yeah, and he's the guy I mentioned earlier who I do have a future on at 50-1.
That's a good. That's a great number.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm happy with it, but I still have a case to make for him at the 20 or whatever. Some people might have to bet. One, the Apex side I think is going to be important. He has that. Two, again, this is narrative based, not really based in statistics or anything, but the Payne Stewart connection. Payne Stewart won here in '99 and at 1 under. Bryson, that's his idol, went to SMU to follow him with a flat cap because of him. It just seems like there might be some kind of written in the stars. And then also just the way he's been playing majors recently. It's just the Masters is, Augusta's not a good fit for him either. And he still figured out a way to finish T6. He's just playing so well. His game is suited for majors. And the point I wanted to make was the Texas wedge. He's one of the best players in the world with the Texas wedge. He can putt it from anywhere. I think this course enables him to do that. And he's he's an underrated putter as well. He's actually a really good bunker player, underrated bunker player too. So if he can dial it back, and he's been getting better at golf course management.
That's the whole thing is right. Well, I think he's always been really good at course management because he picks a lane and then he goes with it. But sometimes he just picks wrong. Like when he picked right at Winged Foot, it was like, oh yeah, he solve the course. Like, this is what him and Matthew Wolff solved the course. Like, hey, let's just do this, and this is going to work, and no one else is going to do this, and it's going to happen fantastically. But it's really funny to think back in time. The week after he tried to drive that par 5 at Bay Hill, he went to the Players and came third. And I can probably count on one hand the amount of drivers he hit that week. He just used irons off the tee. And even in his first go around, he had played Heritage really well. And it's another course that's very course management-y. I've already brought up those courses twice because I do think they all kind of fit in the same bucket, that maybe he can really excel here. But I just worry that if he chooses wrong, which is not something he's been doing lately. It's been a good run for Bryson. But if he doesn't have the right strategy, he might be done by 9 holes on Thursday.
He could be, but I know you were a Bryson fan back in like 2018. Isn't this a great fit for 2018, Bryson?
Oh, it's the best. The best fit for 2018, Bryson.
And I think he's trying to become that. I really do. He's lost already 10 yards in distance average off the tee. I think he's kind of shifting, and a lot of people haven't noticed it. They noticed the size, but just from watching him closely over the last year, and he kind of struggled for a little while, and I think it's because he was making that transition. I do think he wants to be more like that player, and he's shown up at these courses you wouldn't think he would, based on the new beefy, 400-yard Bryson. And I think he's trending back towards that. So if you think of him in that regard, I think this might be the right spot.
It could be, because as you mentioned, like, people do not give Bryson enough credit for legitimately being one of the best putters in the world.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe
the problem, I can't rule him out.
Yeah, I can't rule him out either. It's just I don't like this price tag. Like, you're 50 to 1. I would line up to bet that right now. Like, you see it there? I'll give you the money. You can bet that for me.
Yeah.
18 to 1 when Brooks is at a higher number. I know Brooks isn't in any sort of form, but this is a fantastic Brooks course.
Yeah, it should be. It should be. I don't like that mallet putter. For some reason, I can't picture him winning a major with it.
Well, he's not next because his odds are still down the board, which is shocking to me at a U.S. Open. But Morikawa is next. He's 18 to 1. I was really considering playing the Morikawa double for Memorial and the U.S. Open, but I didn't end up betting him because I got to it too late, unlike you, who I know you did bet Morikawa for Muirfield Village. It's just everything, as I talked about off the top, just lines up perfectly for him. The only, down part of his game, as you can even see on the graphic right now, his approach stats over the past 24 rounds are horrendous, but his approach stats over the past 8 rounds, the past 2 tournaments, all of a sudden, vintage Morikawa is back. But he's still chipping, and he's still putting. If he plays his best, I think he wins.
Yeah, and going back to your point about how important driving accuracy could be, in his last 24 rounds, he's first in good drives gained. He's first in fairway accuracy. So he's the most accurate off the tee in the world right now. And if the distance doesn't hurt him, which I do think on Sunday at Valhalla it did, if you don't have your A+ stuff and you're 180 into every green instead of 140 or 130 like X and Bryson were, then it's hard to keep up and you're not making all the putts. So I do think this is a course where that isn't going to hurt him as much. The irons could be dialed in. It's still not those peak 6-7 approach per week that we're seeing when he was dominating with the iron play, when he won it, the 2 majors. It's not there yet. It's like 4.5 per event, which, it's still great, but it's not like best iron player since Tiger Woods, that conversation we had before. But I agree. He does fit perfectly.
And I don't think that he needs to be the 6, 7, 8 on approach if he's not actively losing strokes around the green.
Yeah, very true. Very true. How was he at the Masters around the green? Was he good? Yeah,
he was. He gained across the board at the Masters.
Yeah, he's going to be tough to beat. The 18 isn't as tempting for me.
Yeah, that's the thing. The 18 sucks, right? I don't want to hope you lose your bet this week, but I kind of hope he comes dead last, and then all of a sudden he's 30 to 1.
Yeah, that would definitely be a lot more intriguing. I can live with losing to him at 18 to 1, but I agree. If you get to 25, 28, it's definitely a little bit better.
Ludvig Aberg is up next. He has this knee injury that we don't really know anything about. He pulled out of Quail Hollow to play at the PGA Championship. It was a preventative withdrawal. Then he sucked at the PGA Championship, and we haven't seen him since he shows up to Memorial. Now, obviously, we don't know how he's going to do. Is he the biggest wild card in this field? Because at full strength, yeah, his around the green sucks, and sometimes his putter can be a bit wayward, but if we're thinking about the new generation of who is the longest, straightest player on tour, it's him.
Yeah, I think typical U.S. Open, he's going to be a threat, for the next 10 years. This is the one, even at full strength, like you mentioned, around the green and putting is going to be really important. I think his biggest weapon is the driver. And I talked to Eduardo Molinari today, who told me he thinks that when he first saw Aberg play in person, that he's a better driver than when he first saw Rory McIlroy, which is some pretty lofty praise. And I'm close to agree with it. So a guy like that you want at a typical long and straight, thick rough guy who drills fairways, but it's 330 every time. I feel like he's good enough where he could win and contend anywhere, including here, but not full strength probably. Although I did see some reports that sleeve that he had on before is gone today. So that could be a good sign. I think a lot of it we'll find out this week.
And even to look back, like we mentioned, like he's not a great around the green player, and you see that by the sea of red on his Fantasy National player profile page, except when you go to the Players and Heritage.
Yeah, there you go. And he's actually been really good at these shorter courses, right? One RSM, so he could fit with those players who are shorter off the tee and win kind of on the smaller courses.
All right, let's get to him. Brooks Koepka's 20-1. I spoke about this with Jeff on our Memorial preview show, that if you just had a friend with $100 who wanted to bet on someone, I feel like this is the bet.
Yeah, those guys who bet the $100 on the one guy, they usually bet on Scheffler, and I think that probably has a higher chance of success than this one. I just have no idea where his game is at, and even after he won that LIV event in Singapore, I still had no idea where his game was at. The putter has been bad this year, really bad. And then he starts tinkering, which I never like to see going into a major. And I didn't like it, before the Masters. And he's been uncharacteristically bad at these majors. And is he the type of player who can just one day figure it out and all of a sudden he's in contention and everyone's kicking themselves? Why the hell did we bet Brooks? Yes, that's on the table, but he's not for me.
What was the round at the PGA Championship where he really he hit that mud ball? I think it was on number 10, the back nine.
Friday.
The Friday par 5, and just hooked it like I do now when I play. He was just like, I don't hit it like 260 into the woods left. I hit it like 180 into the woods left. But either way, that happened, and it seemed to derail him for 27 holes because his Saturday was awful. One of the worst rounds I've ever seen Brooks play. But it's funny, like when you go back and look at him for the week, he wasn't actually all that bad. Like he came in 26th. He gained everywhere across strokes gain metrics. It's just he had a couple really bad shots. And outside of that, I think it was that one round. Let me see the rounds itself. Where's the putting at? Yeah, his putting on Saturday was atrociously bad as well. That it was really that one round that got him. It's funny, like when you look back at Ben Ann's stats as well, it was round 3 at the PGA Championship that just kind of derailed him. And that was the end of it. Now you don't hear anything about Ben Ann.
Yeah. And the thing with Brooks I'd be worried about is he's been putting bad all year. And he had that bad putting round, but that's, nothing new this season. He's having probably the worst putting season of his career. But prior to the Masters, I think it was, where he had every round of his season had been sub 70. And what that means, I don't know, but he had to be playing decent before that. And then I think what he said was he was embarrassed with his Masters performance. He got to work with Claude. Claude talked about this on his podcast about how after the Masters, Brooks called him and said, I'm embarrassed. Like, fuck this. Let's go to work. And then all of a sudden on Thursday, he comes out of the gates hot and we say, oh shit, here's another one from Brooks. And then you said that mud ball. And so it would not surprise me if he figured it out. I'd like to see again another player at LIV Houston. He actually, helped design that course. So we'll see what he does at LIV Houston, but I'm going to be out for now with the acknowledgement that we could be kicking ourselves for this one.
Yeah, this is where I'm thinking. I'm thinking Brooks and Morikawa are my early leans. I don't have a wager in so far, but I might have to make the Brooks bet sooner rather than later in case he has a good week in LIV Houston and wins. Then all of a sudden his number is Rory's number.
The move on that is they're never that fast to react to LIV. See what he does on Friday, Saturday. They don't change it until Sunday usually. So if Saturday he's in contention and you still like it and he's 20, pull the trigger then. Well,
fortunately, he can't win this week because Eugenio's going to win. So
yeah, that's right. Let's go.
Maybe I'll make my Eugenio Brooks double and then I'll be off to the races. I can boost up Morikawa that way since that's a guaranteed winner at triple digits on LIV Tour this week. Max Homa is up next. 4 out of 5 times he's played in the U.S. Open, he has been cut. Now, he's doing a little bit better in majors recently, top 10 at the Open last year. He was obviously in the final or the second to last group playing with Ludvig at the Masters, and he wasn't bad at the PGA Championship. He was T35, not really a great performance by any stretch of the imagination, but I don't really know what to make of him here. I just don't feel like the U.S. Open is going to be the one where he ends up breaking through. Although when you look at the courses where he's won in his career and played the best, they're all sort of like U.S. Open light courses.
Yeah, he won Quail, which is kind of in this region. I'm kind of in the camp that he might never win a major. I think the social media stuff has kind of made him a little bit overrated. So, sometimes you're forced to take a stance on a guy that, I have no issue with Max Homa, but a lot of people think I dislike him because I thought he was overrated just because of his social media presence and all other stuff. And he's won some good events. He's a good player. But I don't think that means he's definitely going to contend and win in the major. But that being said, I do think this is kind of a pretty good fit for him. I don't know what type of form he's in. He was among the favorites a couple weeks ago and missed the cut.
Yeah, Colonial. Yeah, he was like 8 over in the first round.
So I don't know if he's informed. I wouldn't be tempted to bet him anyway, but that's a good enough reason for me to lay off.
And it's funny, his best performances so far this year have come at sort of these elevated events, strong field tournaments at long, hard courses, like top 10 at Wells Fargo, where he does have a win in his career, obviously. 3rd at the Masters, 8th at Bay Hill, 16th at the Genesis, where he has a win. He beat Finau in the playoff and then lost to Rahm when Rahm banked it off the stands when I had money on him. And I was not too happy about that, Matt. It was not a fun one. But his off the tee game has been horrendous for basically 6 weeks now. And I just don't think that you can get away with that here, because it's not like he was a sterling accuracy player to begin with. Now, if he's not hitting it far and he's not accurate, he's pretty screwed.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, I'm always a little bit skeptical of these players. I'm long to adapt on them. The guys who get 30, 31, 32, like him and Clark, who have this really great stretch. They seem like one of the better players, and they kind of start to regress a little bit. I'm kind of in the camp where he's going to be a good but not great player for the entirety of his career.
Well, if that's the case, then so is this next guy. And until they double his odds, I don't think that you can even consider betting him unless he does something magical at Memorial, which is on the table, considering he's won there twice. It's Patrick Cantlay. Dude is bad. I don't get this.
Yeah. I mean, he's been good in this region too. I actually am high on Cantlay long term. I think he is, in a class above even the Homas and Clarks of the world. But I just think mentally in these majors, he just doesn't have it. I think it's a mental thing, but it's gotten between the ears, and I think he just can't really play that well in majors. So the number is tough. I mean, 40-1, is that what he should be?
I think he should be based on his play this year, they overrate Spieth massively as well every single week. Spieth should be 65, 70-1 every single week, and so should Cantlay at this point. He has. What can you point to say that he's been good so far this year? There's nothing. He should have won Genesis. He played 3 great rounds and gagged that away. And that's really been it. He came 3rd at the Heritage, another place where he does usually play well, but it's not like he was sniffing contention there. Once Scottie got into the mix, he was just toast. He wasn't one of the guys trying to run down Scottie in the end. He just kind of came in 3rd place. And he was the one who hit the second shot into the darkness hold and decided to come back in the morning to chip. I don't know what's going on.
So
he said ever since he joined the PGA policy board, he has been bad.
Yeah, I was on him at the Heritage. That was incredibly weird. At his peak, this could be a decent golf course for him. Although, you know what? 8 of his 9 professional wins are on bent grass. I typically don't like to back him on Bermuda. And because when he does win and he does look like a great player, it's because he gains 8 strokes putting, which he can do. But I don't think this is the place for it.
Well, I'm guessing that these next 2 guys might be your guys this week. I mean, you are the #1 supporter of the LIV Tour. Everyone knows that. Bought and paid for. Anyone who follows the internet. This is just common knowledge to people out there on the X machine. Cam Smith is up next. You worry that he just doesn't hit a fairway the entire week, but if he can, it's a great course. This is a perfect course for him.
Oh, I love him. This week or next week. I don't think there's a U.S. Open course, in the rotation besides this one that I would ever consider him at. I don't think he's going to be a great U.S. Open player, but although he has had decent, even before he was Cam Smith, he had some good U.S. Open results.
Yeah, he popped up at Chambers Bay which, now that I think about it, I'm just trying to envision, because I'm like the only person on earth who really enjoyed that US Open. Everyone else got really triggered about it. I don't see why people get so upset about golf courses. Like, it happens sometimes. Like, it's not what you thought it was going to be, so therefore it's the worst thing ever. Like, I would watch an event at Chambers Bay. I thought it was pretty cool. Like, Horschel played really well that week, and like Cam Smith was really good. So was Louis. So was Spieth. Because that was a place where if you didn't have your A+ stuff, you had to start getting creative from around the greens. And I find it so strange that he won at St. Andrews, out of all places, because I think there's two ways that you can really play St. Andrews. One is bomb and gouge it, which we saw Bryson do and Rory do and Cam Young do. And then there's the flip side to it, where you get your Zach Johnsons and Leishmans involved, and then Cam Smith ends up winning, where you hit some great wedges and you're the most creative guy in the world. And I do think the around the green complexes here really do suit what he's up to. And if it truly does benefit the great putters, I talked about Patrick Reed earlier, that he's not here, but this would be a great course for him. Cam Smith's like the really good Patrick Reed.
Yeah, exactly. I agree completely. Creativity around the green is going to be important, and he's wayward with his driver, and he's talked about that he just doesn't know. He has no idea where his driver's going. I think he said that after one of the recent live rounds. But when he clubs down, he's not that bad. Especially if you can take iron, let it run for a while, and then you miss a green with a long iron, so be it. He can figure a way to get up and down. He doesn't have to make a million birdies. Who makes more 8-10 foot par saves than he does? And he's starting to come around. He's starting to get in form. I feel incredibly strong that Cameron Smith is going to be involved. Win, I don't know. But he, look at that leaderboard, last 2-3 groups on Sunday, he's going to be there. I can almost guarantee it.
All right. Well, he's going on the list for me, because I feel like we the guys that we're both super high on, I think I have to automatically put the star next to and give some serious consideration. He's 33-1 right now. He's another guy. Hopefully he just bombs this week in Houston, and then we can get an even better number on Cam Smith. Justin Thomas is up next. And if you told me he could break even putting, I'd tell you he might win.
Yeah, this does feel like, we've been talking about unconventional U.S. Open players. Typically at a U.S. Open, I don't love him, but this is one where, he's great around the green, incredible around the green, super creative, good iron player. His driver, almost Cam Smith-like, where if he's less than driver, I trust him a little bit more. He switched back to that blade putter this week. I don't love the tinkering, but I do like him better with that initial Scottie that he used to win with. And if you look at his strokes gain page, which I was doing today, because I had to make the argument about him winning Memorial, because I think he has a chance there. He is trending back up in all of these stats in terms of strokes gain total, the data golf rankings. He dipped really low, and he's now all the way back to almost where he was. Someone said to me, how can you bet Justin Thomas after, how bad he's been? His last 3 finishes were 8th, 21st, and 5th, all in huge events. If that was anyone else, you'd say he's trending towards a win. But because it's Justin Thomas and people are pissed that he's let him down and he's been bad for 2 years, people look for reasons not to bet him rather than reasons to bet him. And yeah, he's been disappointing for 2 years, but he also has 15 PGA Tour wins. Like, this guy is good, and he's going to be good again. These things happen in golf. Players aren't dominant for 10 straight years. So he is trending up, and I do think he can win one soon. Maybe it's this one. We'll see what he does this week.
Yeah, and even when I think that the Memorial stats are going to get skewed a little bit just because of how easy it is to hit fairways at Muirfield Village, especially because it was going to rain overnight Wednesday into Thursday. I would expect it to be softer early in the week before it really gets baked out. But you could land jumbo fucking jets in there, and the 70% of the field hits the fairway. So I don't think it's going to be a 1v1 because guys are gonna let it rip there, knowing that it's like Wyndham Clark on the 72nd hole of the U.S. Open last year. Like, does he hit that big of a slice if he knows that he can't do it? I don't know. But he knew that he could do it, so why not do it? It's one of those things where if you can just let it fly, let it rip, then that's going to be very good for you, where that's just not going to be on the table here. And the one thing that really stuck out to me with Justin Thomas, and I bet him a few times this year, and I've been pissed at him exactly the same as everyone else has, because he legitimately can't putt, and that's a real problem. But I think through the American Express, he ended up making a bogey on a par 5 when Nick Saban was on the line. Because I remember Sweatin' Burns coming down the stretch, and he was playing in that group with Dunlap. And he ended up putting it in the water. He ended up making bogey. And I think it was his first bogey in like 3 tournaments or something like that, that his bogey avoidance has been off the charts good, which is shocking for a guy who misses so many short putts.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you've seen flashes of like vintage JT more so than ever before, and it didn't get it back overnight, but it's gradually coming back. It would not surprise me if he was involved in this U.S. Open. Again, going forward, I don't love him in U.S. Opens. I do think maybe even Truan's a good spot for him, but he's going to get back to where he was. It takes a little bit of time, and I think he's close.
I know that these courses don't really have much in common with one another, but it will be a USGA setup. What do you feel about Erin Hills in this place? I know they're completely different courses, but when I see the different types of players who ended up at the top of the Erin Hills leaderboard, obviously Brooks won, Hideki and Harman were number 2. Then it was Fleetwood, Fowler, who ended up coming in second at Pinehurst, Xander, Snedeker was inside the top 10 that week as well. So was Trey Mullenix, who's kind of a bomb and gouge player, but Justin Thomas was in there as well. Patrick Reed was up there just like he was at Pinehurst last time. Stricker, Kuchar, Reevy, like some of these shorter players that you just wouldn't expect to be up there on a really long course. And as I start going through my mind, yeah, there were areas. They weren't waste areas like you see at Pinehurst, but there were areas where I remember Paul Casey making a triple bogey there because obviously I bet Paul Casey at a U.S. Open because I'm a loser like that. I was like, oh, he's like the one guy this week who's going to make a triple bogey because if somehow you missed those gigantic fairways, you're absolutely pooched. But it was very similar around the greens where you weren't dealing with a lot of thick rough like you see at a lot of U.S. Opens. That maybe some of those guys can end up propelling themselves up the list because you just see a spattering of a bunch of different types of players up there, not the typical U.S. Open style guys.
Yeah, I completely agree, and that's why I was kind of thinking Chambers Bay before too, just because of how baked out it was. I think those are two good ones.
Next up, Willie Z. Will Memorial tell us the story on Willie Z because he seems a bit lost at the moment?
Yes, and even if he does play well this week, which I think he could, I don't know if I like Pinehurst as a course for him that much. It just feels like he's the prototypical U.S. Open with a thick rough. He hits the fairway, great long iron player. All the things that I think are going to be helpful this week, just like they always are, but they're not going to be the separator that they usually are. And he just has not performed in the first 2 majors. Like if he was going to do great at the majors, you would have thought the Masters or Valhalla too. So I'm not really convinced of it yet. I think he's going to take a little while to get back into form.
Yeah, I mean, he did come top 10 at the Masters. He just was never really in contention at the Masters. And I bet on him when he got down to like 80-1 or something crazy at the PGA Championship. He was one of the following guys that no one wanted to bet. Be like, hey, I'll bet Will Zalatoris. And, dude couldn't chip to save his life. And that's been his problem right now. Although at major championships, and this was a thing with Hovland for a long time too, that at a standard event, he can't chip or putt, but you get him into these tournaments and all of a sudden he's okay.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, he definitely is a big game player. And then the Masters, I guess he was 9th, but typically, he seemed like he's going to win every time he's in form. And then, I can definitely see him playing okay, but it just feels like too much too soon.
I think that he's lingering around there. I'm not out on Will Zalatoris like you might be, but I do want to see him do something at Memorial. It doesn't even need to be a top 5 or a top 10. Just play like adequately well 3 out of the 4 rounds. Like bury the fact that maybe you were playing a lot better. Maybe get a bad break or 2. I didn't bet on him this week, so he can not win for all I care. In fact, I hope Will Zalatoris doesn't end up winning. But just to see some sort of form, like there's a few guys that I'm sort of a wait and see process with. And the next guy, I've bet on this guy already. I have a future on him at 50-1, and I thought that future was going to be very good for a while. And he might be longer than 50-1 by the time that we get to opening tee at Pinehurst, unless he does something at Muirfield Village. And that's the defending U.S. Open champion, Wyndham Clark, who I'm not really keen on his accuracy, and although he's been bad around the greens lately, he's a fantastic short game player. He's an excellent putter. He hits the ball super high like you were talking about. He does seem like a very logical fit here.
Yeah, I wouldn't bet him at 500-1. If Wyndham Clark wins back-to-back U.S. Opens, I'll cut off my testicles on live air. It's just not going to happen. I just can't see it happening. He's form has regressed. He was good at Heritage. You mentioned that being potential comp, but T47 at Quail, people thought he was going to be a contender there. PGA Championship was horrible. The Masters was horrible. After talking about LIV Players only played 54 holes, he only played 36. I just think he's, players like that, not a super elite player, pretty good player, had a really hot stretch, got his major. That's great. I think it's probably his only one, and I think he's kind of in that little peaks and valley of his career. He's in one of those valleys right now.
It would seem to be that way. I would tend to agree with you. I'm not going to jump on the cutting off my own nuts train with you. That can be something that you do. And I do have money on Wyndham Clark to win already, and I can't get out of that. So I'm kind of hoping he wins now to see what you actually have to do with that. You might want to retract that just in case nuclear putter Wyndham Clark ends up showing up, because that is still one of his outs that we talk about. You know the distance is going to be there. Whether the accuracy is there, who knows? The approach game can spike in any given week. The around the green is usually pretty good. The two courses that I continue to bring up, he does have top 3 finishes at both of them, both the Players and Heritage so far this season. But what he did at Pebble Beach, and I know that it was actually a live win because it was only 54 holes, but the fact that he can just start draining 35-footers, and we've seen it even when he was a bad player, and he was Wyndham Clark, not a guy who we'd even consider bringing up on one of these shows, that was still something that he could do. And if this course truly does benefit great putters, I would classify him as a great putter.
Yeah, I mean, off the tee and putting, right, is kind of what he does really well. I just can't see it. I can't see it. But he does have a good short game, good putter. There are reasons to think he's a good course fit. To me, it's almost like narrative based. He just won a U.S. Open. He's been bad in the majors this year. Maybe he gets involved, but winning would be just so crazy to me.
Yeah, I mean, I would tend to agree with you. That's why, I mean, I have him at 50-1. I thought that number would be 20-1 based on his performance throughout the course of the early year. I bet that in February, and it was looking good until we got to the Masters and his season got absolutely derailed. And then he might be 66-1, 70-1, 80-1 again for this U.S. Open, just like we saw last year when Cust ended up getting the big win on Wyndham Clark. It is funny because throughout the course of his career, he's been excellent around the greens, like gaining basically 2 strokes per tournament around the greens. And even throughout the course of last year, like he had a few blips, just like everyone does. Like not everyone has a great chipping week every single week, but he gained in, 80% of his tournaments pretty substantially too. And that weirdly has been the thing that has left him so far this year. He has only gained around the greens in 2 of his past 10 tournaments, Heritage and the Players.
Interesting. I think that happens a lot. And I think the reason why is because these players, when they start practicing something, like he didn't used to be a great iron player. And then when he became a great iron player, that's when he started winning a lot. It's just off the tee, putting and around the green. And then when you start focusing and working extra hard on, improving that part of your game, then you start to neglect what made you great in the first place. And that it could be a terms of, the rest of his game regressing because he's worked on some of his deficiencies.
I think that absolutely makes sense, and we'll see if he can get it back this week. I think the fans are now looking forward to this. Jordan Spieth. It's a spot for him if there was one, but dude can't hit irons, man. Like it's gonna be a tough U.S. Open to win when you can't hit any iron into a green.
No, I think he's hurt too. I mean, he's said he's not doing anything with the wrist until after the season, and until he does something with that wrist, I'm all set with him because seems like it's a glaring problem. I mean, he got up to this point last year, 2 years ago, where he was a great player again for a short stretch where he was competing in every event, and he's just so unpredictable. He could be 5 shots clear after Thursday, and I still wouldn't think he has a chance to win because that big number is coming. That mistake is coming. There's no way around it.
Matty Fitz is up next. He is a U.S. Open champion, obviously, beating Will Zalatoris down the stretch, and Scottie Scheffler. He's 40-1 coming in. He's kind of been good across the board, but because everything on his board is green, like the putting, he's gaining putting, he's gaining off the tee, he's gaining on approach, he's gaining around the greens, but just marginally. Like he's a very average player at the moment who does not seem to be deserving of being 40-1. He should be, 90-1, 100-1.
Yeah, he's getting that respect because he recently won a U.S. Open. This could be, in theory, a good place for him. Is he going to win, 2 out of 3 U.S. Opens? No. But he, like you said, he's playing average right now. He's okay. He's getting a little bit better. He had that problem with the weight in his driver, the bizarre story at the beginning of the year. He's figured that out. The driving accuracy is back again. I do like him in tougher events, difficult events, grind it out. He's pretty good. He has like crosshand chipping, which is funky as well. Probably not going to win 2 out of 3 U.S. Opens, though.
As much as I hate to say it, this really feels like a good Tommy Fleetwood course.
Oh, it's a perfect Tommy Fleetwood course. Perfect.
So top 5 bet on Tommy? Not to win, top 5, maybe top 10? That's the route we want to go here?
Yeah, and if we do that, make sure everyone knows not to start bitching at us when he's T33 on Saturday afternoon because he'll still come in the top 5. It does feel like, absolutely perfect. You don't want to talk about guy who hits fairways, some bogey avoidance, irons play. He's just not going to make a million birdies, which is okay. You might not need it here. Good around the green. Yeah, I can't even think of a better course for Tommy at a U.S. Open than this one. And he's a great major player. I mean, look at what he's done in majors. Firm and fast, he's pretty good. If you look at strokes gained total on very difficult courses, he's in the top 15. Firm and fast, he's 16th. So yeah, I think there's a lot to like about him. Can he win? No, I'm kind of done believing that now. I mean, I've gone down that path a lot of times. Not in majors, granted, but there's an obvious problem there. But yeah, course fit wise, he's great.
I weirdly feel like he will get one in his career. Like we mentioned Max Homa or even Cantlay. I think Tommy is more likely to get a major than those guys.
He's more talented than them. So the question is, like, does he figure it out between the years, whatever's bothering him? And because he wins in other places, he's beaten Rory in big events. It's just not in America, not a U.S. event. So I think the longer it goes, the more that seed of doubt continues to grow in his mind. And I think it's a real crutch and bugaboo. I mean, he should go see the guy that Wyndham Clark saw, or the woman that Wyndham Clark saw about the, the mental coach.
Tommy Fleetwood has 3 top 5s at U.S. Opens in his past 7 starts. Like, he has been very good at U.S. Opens over the course of his career. I like the 40-1 is just too tough with him. If it got bigger, I can always squeeze my arm a little bit. I can get in on Tommy Fleetwood, but it does feel like a very good top 10, top 5 bet to me.
Yeah, and even like one of those, the gold, silver, bronze picks when you have like a top 20 plus 150 or whatever, like those seem really, really likely for him this week. I really think he's going to play well, but wins probably not in the cards.
Well, we talked about the Aaron Hills crossover a little bit, and this guy's name came up, coming in second place at that tournament, and he has won the Players, in theory, during the COVID year. We just have only seen him play twice in the past 3 months. He played at the Masters and was bad. Then he took all that time off, only to withdraw from Quail Hollow and then chip and putt his way around Valhalla, but couldn't hit a driver or an iron, which is very atypical of him. And this is another player that I really want to see some life out of at Muirfield Village, because Hideki, in a weird way, if he gets his accuracy back, which he has not been doing as of late and was earlier in the season, he's basically everything that we talked about with Justin Thomas, except he actually does putt sometimes.
Yeah, and I think he has the stones to do it. He's a great U.S. Open player. I mean, he's had a lot of success at U.S. Opens, and it makes plenty of sense. He's hits fairways when he's in form, gets scorching hot with the irons, can putt. I like Hideki in theory. I don't trust that he's healthy. I think if he was healthy, he'd probably be 33-1. And I just think the U.S. Open is that kind of the most of the majors where it's really tough to come out of form with a million question marks and win the event.
What if we see like 3 good rounds from him this week and you see what you want to see from the stats?
Yeah, he's one of those numbers that could definitely take a nosedive if he starts, if he's in contention on Saturday.
Yeah, I think even if I start seeing it midway through round 1, like he's actually just striping it and hitting it on the screws again, I'd be like, yeah, good enough for me. I'm in.
What's he, 50-1?
Yeah, he's 50-1.
Yeah, it's a good number. I like it. I like Hideki, yeah.
He was 35th here in 2014. You forget that, like, how old is Hideki now? Because even I forget it all the time. I think he's only like 31 years old.
30, yeah. 31. So he would have been 21 at that time?
Yeah, he's 32 now. Yeah, so yeah, he would have been 22 when he last played. And his game, I would say, is much better now.
Yeah, he seems like a great golf course fit. And he's so good around the green. That's one of the most underrated things about Hideki. People think because he misses short putts sometimes that he's not a good around the green player, but he's one of the best.
Throughout the early course of the year, we had been talking about Cam Young and how well he had played at majors, and that just has not come to fruition. He did have a top 10 at the Masters. That was nice, but he's 50-1 in this market right now. Scam Young can't win any tournaments. He's very much shaping up to be the new Tommy Fleetwood or whoever the hell you want to throw on that mix, but he has played longer, harder courses really well. He's played shorter courses quite well too, weirdly enough, in his career. I don't know where his game is at. He's kind of like, Wyndham Clark has a signature event win. He has 2 signature event wins and a major over the course of the past 15 months or so. We talk about Cam Young like he's done the same, but they're both kind of on the downward spiral right now, it feels like.
Yeah, you say you don't know where his game is. I know where it is. It's shit. His last five events, 62nd, 34th, 63rd cut. And I'm sure he's one of the most popular bets in all 5 of those events too. Like everyone that keeps expecting he's going to turn it around, and I've bet him a couple times too, but he hasn't. And the Players 54th, Pebble Beach Pro-Am 70th. These are courses. The courses that he could maybe have that spike week is if it was like a winged foot when you had a Matt Wolff and Bryson in the mix, because he's so good off the tee. But even he's been okay off the tee, but he's gaining his last 4 starts, 0.09, 0.3, 0.4. Like if he's doing that off the tee, he has no chance whatsoever. And he's lost strokes on approach in 3 of his last 4. He's losing around the green. He can never really putt. I just think he's completely going the wrong direction.
Jason Day is up next, and of the top 45 players on the odds board, only 2 are in the minus tee to green for the past 24 rounds. It's Rickie and it's Day. He's currently 50-1. He was inside the top 5 the last time they played at Pinehurst. I'm not going to bet him to win because this number is ridiculous. It should be like 4 times this number. However, I will say for a placement, a top 20, whatever it might be. And I think this number resets hard come Monday, because unless he wins Memorial or something, which I don't think that he's going to do, he's more likely to be cut than win Memorial. But the around the green is great. The putting remains great. That almost like what we saw from Justin Rose at the PGA Championship, where this guy with no form just has a great week. I could see Jason Day having a great week at this course.
Yeah, I could definitely see it. And he's done that recently. I mean, at Wells Fargo, he finished T4. He gained over 8 strokes short game around the green and putting combined. So can he do that? Yeah. And his putting has been excellent this year. He's gained strokes putting in 10 straight events. So could he go and putt anywhere and win? Absolutely. And, but I do think course fit wise, it does make some sense. His approach has been horrible though. He's lost strokes on approach in 6 of his last 9 starts. So it would have to be that situation you described, which I guess is possible. But even Rose gained strokes on approach at the PGA.
He did, but I'm just thinking where you would have to gain strokes at the PGA when the winning score is going to be minus 20 if you were going to be in contention. Like I could see guys with just absurdly bad approach stats this week and still grind out a bunch of pars, and that be good enough to keep them just lingering around if we think that the winning score is going to be like even or minus 1 or something like that.
Yeah. Everything we've been talking about keeps pointing me to Denny for some reason. Not that he can win, but he's going to be that random guy who finishes 3rd or 4th.
Well, if this guy's putter remains as hot as it was over the weekend in Canada, why can't Tom Kim be that guy?
Yeah, that does make some sense. And he was striping the ball at over the weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Like Thursday, he was missing putts, and then Saturday and Sunday he started making them, and then he climbed up the leaderboard. But he hit the ball great. He gained over 4 strokes on approach, which is the most since the Masters. And he's starting to play better, right? He's 26th, 24th, and 4th his last 3 starts. Memorial, I was kind of looking at him. It doesn't seem like the right fit. This could be the right fit. But we haven't really seen him on this. This feels like a unique kind of course that I don't really know what to expect. I like him on those little short courses where he can win anywhere. I think he's going to win Travelers. But could this be an okay course for him? Yeah.
Yeah, he was 8th at the U.S. Open last year at LA Country Club. I think a lot of people kind of forget that. And I think that he was top 10. Was he top 10 at the Open the year before that? I feel like he had a really good Open.
Yeah, he was.
Yeah.
He was 4th.
He's popped up in some of the, and he was 2nd. He tied with Rahm and Straka and all those guys who ended up losing to Harman. And then he was 8th at the U.S. Open a year ago. That I think this is actually one of the better U.S. Open courses for him. Now that his accuracy, we talked about Morikawa being the best in the field off the tee in terms of driving accuracy. You would expect Tom Kim to be top 5, and for whatever reason, all year he just hasn't been that guy. But he has started to turn back into that guy in his past 2 starts. If the irons are truly back and he's not just bleeding strokes on the green anymore, I mean, it's not like he's a bad short game player. He's a good short game player that if there's one where he can seriously contend, it really feels like it might be this one.
He's a spike putter too. People think he's a bad putter because they see him miss putts. He's not a bad putter. Some weeks he's the best putter in the world. Some weeks he's the worst putter in the world, which is kind of what you want when you're betting on guys to win a golf tournament. It would be wild if Tom Kim goes and wins the U.S. Open. It would be awesome.
I would love it. I mean, I love Tom Kim. Even if I don't end up betting him, I would be, unless he's going up head-to-head with Wyndham Clark as you try to get sodomized. Tom Kim would be a very, very happy winner for me.
Yeah, that'd be a double for you if both you and I have to cut my testicles off. It'd be on live on the show too, I assume.
Oh, of course. I mean, we'll put up the explicit ranking here, and we'll warn the viewers, but that's what's going to happen. Min Woo.
Have we missed a guy?
Does
the guy I really want to talk about that I feel like has...
I'm sorry, Joaquin didn't make the field.
That is my boy. That's right. No, he didn't. But no, I guess he has. I guess he's maybe longer in the odds than this. So I guess I'll wait.
Yeah, Minwoo Lee is the next guy up. He hasn't brought it this year. He's just not been good.
I got asked a question about betting him a couple weeks ago, and I said since the first day of this season, I've gone into each event telling myself he's overrated, and that's come to fruition so far. I'm like, I'm not going to bet him because whatever his price he should be, he's usually like half that because he's such a fan favorite, and for good reason. He's the man. He's great personality. Really, hits the long ball, exciting player. But I just think results wise, he hasn't really shown it. So I don't know why he'd be 50-1. That's another one of those ones which I imagine will be 80-90 when the time comes. But even so, I would not be interested in it whatsoever.
Like when he was getting away with it and having, like he came 5th at the U.S. Open a year ago. How did he do it? Chipping and putting. Like he gained marginally. If he can just marginally gain with his irons, then he actually is a threat if he can chip and putt. But the chipping and putting has just evaporated so far this year, which he had for all of last year. We know he's going to drive the ball well. He does that every single week. He has gained more than 2 strokes on approach 3 times in like 50 PGA starts.
You just can't win majors having that type of iron play. You just can't. I don't care if it's an iron course, not an iron course. You got to be able to hit big iron shots when you're trying to get in contention, and he hasn't shown us that he can do it.
So we spoke about this guy, I think, last time, and whether or not he was a course fit for here. Sahith Theegala has somehow morphed into Cam Young overnight that people are just, I guess, done with betting him.
I like him. I like him a lot. He's been good in majors. If I had some room in my card, he'd be somebody I would definitely consider. This feels like a great course for him. He's a shot maker. He's a creative player. He's a good putter. He can hit fairways, especially when he dials it back.
He is
I think
awful around the green player, like truly horrendous.
Is he?
Yeah, he really is. Like he has worse numbers than Vic does from greenside. Like he makes bad shots. Like you remember the ones that he chips in, and I think that's kind of the reason that it gives you this weird illusion because he does seem to chip in a lot for a guy who's really horrible. I think he tries to make every shot, and then therefore he makes some. The other ones roll like 30 feet off the green.
Yeah, so I guess looking at it now, he has been the last 7 or 8 events. He's been horrific around the green. But when he first came on tour, that was one of his strengths. When he won Fortinet, he gained over 4 around the green, and he was probably one of the best around the green players from last year's Open Championship all the way through the swing season. And then he was good, and then it's been slowly declining, and now it's at an all-time low. So I don't know what's going on with that.
It's really strange, and maybe this is kind of the perfect course because the one place where he actually did gain strokes, albeit marginally, was at Heritage when he ended up coming in second. And he is, almost like we talked about with Jason Day. He's sort of like the upside Jason Day player. It's crazy that they're the same betting odds at this point in time because Sahith's probably going to drive it well. He'll have his few wayward drives, but somehow he'll scramble to make par from there, like whatever. And the iron play could absolutely spike. Like that goes in a sinus curve up and down every 2 weeks. And I mean, when he putts great most of the time, which is not something you can say about most players on the PGA Tour.
Yeah, he's definitely one of the best putters on tour. Although last week, again, he was a popular bet. He was missing literally every 3-foot putt. But he seems like a big game player, and that's kind of why I wouldn't want to rule him out. Is because he second at Heritage, which was a bigger event this year. T12 of the PGA Championship. API was T6. Players was T9. He's coming in the top 10. Waste was 5th. So in Century, which is elevated, he was 2nd. These big events, he seems to show up.
And he was in, the second to last group at the PGA Championship? He just had a bad Sunday.
Yeah, he did. I forgot T12. I mean, and he was definitely involved. I think he's going to be a big game player for the next decade.
And that was good for him, I think, to get that out of his system. Because we see this happen with guys that we want to be ahead of schedule, and sometimes those guys end up winning. But that's few and far between. The vast majority of the time, the first time someone gets into contention at a major with a legitimate chance to win, he did have a legitimate chance to win. He was 2 back going into Sunday. They just absolutely shit all over themselves. So what are you going to do?
Building the scar tissue.
Yeah, you got to build that up. It's like, losing in the conference finals or the second round when you're like the Oklahoma City Thunder this year. I bet you they'll do better next year.
Oh, exactly. Absolutely. Like my Celtics last year, they're ready to win it now.
No, they're not. They're going to get Luka. It's going to be hilarious.
I love Luka too, but I mean, obviously rooting for the Celts.
Tony Finau is up next. I just don't think he can make enough putts.
No, next guy. No, I mean, he just has been infuriating this year. He had a stretch where he was striking the ball like Scottie Scheffler, and he didn't come in the top 30 somehow. He's just been completely horrible on the greens, but even when he does figure out and putts well, that's the one day he'll have a bad approach day or a bad off the tee day. He just can't put it all together. And he should be having, based on the way he's hitting the ball, so much of a better season than he's having. He did finish T18 at the PGA, and he gained almost 9 strokes on approach. Like, if you gain 9 strokes on approach, you can't come better than 18th. It just feels like he can't put it together.
Hatton is up next. He's also in this betting range. He's 50-1, and again, unless he does something over the weekend, I'm guessing it's going to be larger than that. The approach play at the PGA Championship was legit bad. It was okay round 1, then devastating to his overall results the next 3 rounds. Although he did make the cut, there are very few U.S. Opens where I would like him at, but this actually seems like one where he could do quite well.
This is the one I was waiting for that I thought was going to be in the 40 range. I like him a lot. I think this is a perfect, like a Marty Keimer. He has kind of a similar skill set to him. Really good putter. He's been good on these Bermuda greens in this region. He's been great, kind of the Heritage region. He wasn't great at the PGA, bad on approach, but gained off the tee. He's been hitting fairways more often. He used to have a kind of knack for spraying the ball. He hasn't been doing it as much. On LIV, he's been getting better, much better. T9 at the Masters, we talked about that being a kind of a comp, how around the green is going to be so important in putting. Adelaide was 14, Singapore was T5. PGA Championship is what it is. He's never going to win on a it doesn't feel like the right course for him, especially at 18 under. If it plays tough and it's about grinding and making a par and getting up and down from creative places, I feel like Hatton's a perfect guy for that.
Yeah, the only thing I would watch out for, unfortunately, it seems to be baked into the price, and I do think that he would drop to like 75 or 80 unless he ends up becoming one of the more popular bets in the early part of the week, is that if he draws one of those unlucky lies, he might just eject.
He definitely might. But he's been gaining strokes. He's been incredible off the tee, basically in every start. And even the PGA, he gained over 4 strokes off the tee. So that's been pretty reliable for him.
DJ is up next. Can we just say no and move on?
Yeah, he's done being a serious golfer in majors.
Is he just done? He won in Vegas in February. That seems like it was 18 years ago at this point. It was 4 months ago.
He was drilling putts that week. And that's one thing I don't love about I don't like 54 holes. I've been saying that since day one. I actually hate it. And I think one thing about it that I don't love is, like we saw it with Wyndham Clark. You have that guy on Saturday, he gains 8 strokes putting and ties the lead. That guy is never winning on Sunday. It's like Shane Lowry at the PGA Championship. Who thought he had any chance to win? He had none, even though he was in the lead or tied for the lead or won back, whatever it was. That's what kind of happened with DJ, it felt like. When he won in Vegas, he was just drilling putts on Saturday, and I felt like if it went one more round, he wouldn't have been able to hang on because his just tee to green game wasn't what it usually is, and he's been embarrassingly bad in majors, right? Again, in terms of being fair, if you want to criticize guys like Wyndham Clark who've been bad in majors, Dustin Johnson's been horrible in majors. Up to his standard, he's one of the best major players of his generation. Definitely one of the best U.S. Open players of his generation. He should be a good fit for him, but I just don't know where his game's at. I don't know what he's doing. He's been T43 at the PGA, and he came he's like plus 20 at the Masters. Like, show me something first. I'm really disappointed in the way he's gone into his early 40s, and because I thought he's going to guy who can compete for a long time.
He seems to me like someone who would benefit from a PGA LIV merger.
Yeah.
He's like, some guys are just on easy street over there, and he's the main one who's just like, I'm good. I did it. I won life.
And that's the problem with people who want to say, the LIV schedule is better than the PGA Tour schedule. It's better for the players. They're more rested. And the other people who say they're rusty. How can they get better if they're not sharpening, their skills every single week? The truth is always somewhere in the middle. There's always a gray area, and every person is unique and different and individual. So what might be good for one person, it might be terrible for somebody else, and that's exactly what we're seeing.
I mean, you can just point to even like Louis or Burmeister. I mean, Louis especially, that I just think he's excelled since he went to LIV. Like, that is the perfect schedule for him. Just every 3 weeks, that's good enough.
Yeah, and like DJ thinks it's a good schedule for him because that's what he wants to do, but it clearly isn't in terms of his results. And even when he was in the mix last year at like the PGA, he was a first round leader, or was the U.S. Open, one of the two. But he was making a bunch of putts. He still is a good putter when he's hot. Still a streaky putter. Could he have a good round? Yeah, I mean, like I wouldn't be opposed to betting him a first round leader, but I just think he can't put 4 rounds together with a ball striking right now.
Yeah, I think this is around the green game. Well, it still is somewhat at a high level. That just a bad break or two, and they could just go sideways on him really quickly. Which is, you can make the case for anyone who could potentially do that. I'm with you. He just doesn't seem to be a very serious guy in major championships right now. How about Sam Burns? I'm just waiting for him to do something in a major.
As far as majors go, I kind of like this one for a little bit. I like the region. I like the fact that he's putting on fast Bermuda. He's really good on that. I don't think he can win, but I do think he could be involved. Yeah, I'm going back and forth on him, but I can see an argument. I don't hate a Sam Burns bet at all.
He has missed the cut in, what is this, 3 consecutive majors, T32 at the U.S. Open a year ago, missed cut at the PGA Championship. So he's missed in 5 of his past 6 majors, failed to make the weekend. And yeah, the approach play is back on the uptick. I mean, as someone who had money on him coming down the stretch at the American Express and just against a bunch of jobbers, and he just completely folded coming down the stretch. And even in Canada 2 weeks ago, he ended up coming in 10th. He had a really great week. If he had just made half of the putts that weren't even close on Sunday, he would have been challenging Bobby Mack. Like, that's the guy that you should have been sweating, but you didn't have to because he couldn't make a putt.
Yeah, I know. I really, when I was going into Sunday, I was like, I love the spot Bobby's in, 4 shots up. Do I feel perfect? No. But the reason I was so confident is because I think the guy who's going to chase him down is the other guy I have, Sam Burns. And he just didn't do it. Didn't make a single putt. Started missing fairways. He just, when he's been getting in contention, he's been completely shitting the bed. So I do like the course for him, but he's shown in past majors that he can't be trusted.
So we'll rapid fire through sort of the wheelhouse range of these like 60, 70, 80s guys. Shane Lowry is the first one up. Again, every course on paper looks like it's great for Shane Lowry until he doesn't gain 8 strokes putting in one round and he ends up missing the cut because he can't make a 2-footer. But other than that, I know his around the green numbers have not been good lately, but typically he is a very creative around the green player. Like this is a perfect course for him to get it up and down. And a high winning score, I do think favors him a lot.
Oh, it definitely does, because he doesn't have to make a million putts. Miss the 10-footer for birdie and tap it in for par. And he can do that, and he's hitting the ball pretty well. But he's not hitting it as well as he was, even with the fake PGA Championship finish. Before that, he was striping it. And when he almost won, a couple events earlier this year, Honda, he was hitting it great. And now it seems to be going the other way. So could he figure out the putter and maybe get involved? Yeah, I guess. But it's just, how can you trust him? I mean, he made it at the Canadian Open last week. He had a 3-foot putt that didn't come anywhere close to the hole. I couldn't even believe it when I saw it. Okay,
well, another guy who sucks on the greens but has been excellent everywhere besides the PGA Championship, weirdly enough, is Siwoo Kim. Again, he's going to hit every single fairway. We know that he can get like Rory-esque with his irons. He didn't have it at the PGA Championship, and even last week. He didn't have it at the PGA Championship in terms of results, but he still gained with his irons. It was the only place where he did gain. Other than that, 3.5 at Colonial and just had a terrible putting week. He was 16th at the Wells Fargo. He lost 5 strokes putting. He was 13th at Byron Nelson, lost a stroke putting. At the Heritage, he's losing putting. At the Players, he actually made some putts and came in 6th. Like, he's won a Players Championship. He's won in this region a bunch. He's actually playing great golf, tee to green. Can we just get lucky with the putter with him?
Probably not, but it might be worth a look anyway, even if he doesn't. Siwoo is the type of guy. Is he going to go win a U.S. Open? I mean, that, I feel like, looking at everything in a microscope, he looks good. But take a step back, is Siwoo Kim going to win the 2024 U.S. Open? That'd be pretty surprising.
I guess it would be surprising, but I think of guys in this range, like, how many PGA wins does he have now? 5? That when he gets hot, it's unlike, there's no other player of his skill set who gets as hot and has as high of an upside for like an 18-hole stretch as he seems to. Like, he just becomes a top 5 player in the world for 13 holes in a row, and you're like, what is going on here? And even when he won the Players, it was a very difficult Players Championship that year that really had to rely on his world-class short game that, like I said, if he could just figure out how to putt just a little bit, because I don't think that he's going to put himself into too much trouble here.
Yeah, in his last 36 rounds, he ranks 11th in Donald Ross designs. So I think that's a pretty good sign for him.
Sungjae is up next. I have no interest in Sungjae. People just keep trying to make Sungjae happen. Dude doesn't have to go to the military. He doesn't give a fuck anymore.
No, I do think it's coming. He's starting to play better. It's not going to be winning a U.S. Open, but like when we get to that stretch, Travelers, Wyndham, I think he could be, back in the mix. He actually, in his last 36, he's been doing some pretty encouraging things in terms of strokes gained and difficult, firm and fast. He is one of those players who could benefit from a lot of rollout on the fairways because he is a short hitter, good putter. He's not there yet. And I think his game overall is not there yet, but I think he is trending in the right direction. But yeah, no for this week.
Yeah, and he has a pretty poor majors track record outside of that one T2 at the Masters, which was played in November.
The fake Masters, yeah.
Yeah. Fake news
no
win
fans
for
either.
What's that?
No fans either. It's a lot of reasons.
Russell Henley is actually the next guy up on the betting board. And I mean, I hope he wins this week because I bet him. He's currently 70-1 for the U.S. Open. This is the type of player that I love here. Like, he just kind of does everything well and hits every fairway.
Yeah, we talked about that 2014 leaderboard. I mean, feels like the exact guy that would be 7th on that leaderboard because he fits that. And I guess he is the modern day version of that. He's great on Donald Ross designs too. 5th in strokes gained total. He's played well in majors recently, right? Even the long majors that you wouldn't think suit him, he's been good at. So yeah, I could definitely see him being one of those players in the mix. Does he have the balls to win a major? No. But could he be that, spoiler, or the guy who's in the last group with one of the studs? Absolutely.
Keegan Bradley is the next one up. I bet Keegan Bradley in his past 2 starts. He came second, and he had a great week at the PGA Championship. Just couldn't do anything with his putter. Couldn't do anything with his irons at Colonial, weirdly enough. He was tied for 4th here 10 years ago. I think his game is kind of right for U.S. Opens, even at Brookline. I know that was in the Northeast, but he's 100-1 right now. Seems like a good number, and I bet you it gets bigger than that.
Yeah, especially if you're doing the each way and all that. There was one player in the field that Bryson DeChambeau didn't gain more strokes than off the tee at the PGA Championship, and that was Keegan Bradley. Gained almost 9 strokes off the tee, which I don't really know how he could be that much better than some of these big hitters. But yeah, he's playing incredibly well. He is 3rd in his last 36 rounds in apex height on his shots. So that's something that we're looking for that I think is going to be important this week. He's 29th on strokes gained in very difficult courses. He's in everything I'm looking at. He's kind of in the top end. I did a little mini model of everything like long term, the apex height, the Donald Ross, the firm and fast, and the very difficult courses. He's 14th in that little mini model. So I do like him a lot.
Who are the top players in apex height? Just in this field for reference. I know Goddard didn't get in. He's usually near the top.
Yep, he was near the top. First is Bryson. Second is Cam Davis. That's why I mentioned him earlier, because the apex height combined with the Donald Ross, he's 2nd and 4th in those 2 things. And then he obviously put on a show at the qualifier to get in. He's 2nd. Keegan is 3rd. Pendrith, Rory, Benon, Zalatoris, Young, Mitchell, Fowler, Minwoo, Burns, Jaeger, Hatton.
Jaeger's somewhat interesting, but you mentioned Ben Im. We should probably talk about him. I like Ben Im a lot. I don't know. I mean, guy can't close out the Sony Open or any tournament, so I don't really know if he can close this one out. I did find it funny that his putting has actually been a lot better recently, and somehow his short game has gone to shit, which is odd considering he's like a top 5 around the green player in the world over the past half decade. It's just, a bad stretch for him. Maybe he gets that back. Yeah,
and he is... if you look at like a prototypical U.S. Open skill set, he feels like the perfect guy. He absolutely pumps the ball. I mean, when at Quail Hollow, I was on him. He finished 3rd. You looked at one point, they always have those graphics where the spot where everybody hits them. There was like a bunch of little circles where 320, 330 range, and there was 2 spots at like 345, and that was Rory McIlroy and Ben On. He hits the ball really far. Like you said, good around the greens. When I interviewed him, I talked to him about this course for him, and he said he thinks the more difficult, the better. He's looking forward to this event. He says he thinks he's the top 10 player in the world, and I think skill-wise, he definitely could be. Would it surprise me if he was in the mix with the way he's playing like one of the best players in the world this year on the PGA Tour? He's playing great. So take away the name and kind of the connection we have to thinking that he is, isn't a closer, which he hasn't been. But skill-wise, he's capable of contending in this event.
Yeah, and he is the 2009 U.S. Amateur champion, so he has won at a USGA setup before. Hopefully he wins Memorial this week, and I have tons of money to waste at the U.S. Open. That would be very nice.
Me too.
Few more. Billy Horschel, yes or no?
No.
Okay, so no Billy Horschel. How about Brian Harman?
This does feel like a good Harman course, doesn't it?
Yeah, but I don't want to do that.
I'm not going to do it, and I don't want to do it, and I'll be rooting against it happening. But again, we talked about that little spattered leaderboard. I could see, Harman's ass being T6 and, kind of being in the mix somewhat. He can putt his way. He's been good in this area. He's from this area. The short off the tee is not going to hurt him. It is a good setup for him.
Cam Davis, weirdly enough, has some nice Sawgrass and Heritage results in his career. It's not the most consistent of these guys because he's not consistent at all, and won at a Donald Ross course in Detroit, too. So very interesting with Cam Davis. I wasn't even considering him.
In the Apex height, we talked about, I think maybe like a top 20 or something. That might be the ceiling.
Corey Connors is the next one. And there's going to be a lot of Canadians in this field. Listen, I know that he's won at Valero twice at like crazy low scores, but you'd always think that if he was ever going to be in contention, it would be at a place like this, where if he could just fire like 1 under over 72 holes, that might be good enough. And that could be good enough this week.
Doesn't he feel like one of those players, like almost like a Duffner, where like you wouldn't be surprised at the end of his career if he won one?
I completely agree. Like, he just needs to get hot with the putter. The drawback to Corey Connors is always that it's not just the putter that needs to flip for him. He also sucks around the green. And you're just not going to hit that many greens in regulation this week where that's not going to come into play. It's sort of like the minor case for Vic, except Vic can putt, and he's better than Corey Connors. Although approach-wise, he must be up there with Scheffler over the past month.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. He's absolutely striping the ball over the last month. And that's why I bet him this week. I think the Memorial is probably a better setup. I know he's custed now, so probably not going to win. But I think fairway green. If you can get away with doing that, he can win and just be neutral or +1 on the greens. That's enough. Where was he in the final few groups at a recent major? Or am I making that up?
At the PGA Championship last year at Oak Hill. And then he plugged his ball in the bunker.
Yep, that's right. I mean, his game is suited for majors, right? He's reliable off the tee, reliable on approach, and then see what happens with the putter. I don't love this one for him. I think I'd like a different kind of layout for him.
I'm out on Rickie. Any chance you're in?
No, not at all.
Okay. How about the Burmista Dean Burmeister, another guy who's benefited greatly from being on LIV. He's at 80-1. Valhalla was really the perfect course for him, I think, in major championships. And maybe a normal U.S. Open, this doesn't feel like the spot for him.
Totally agree. A lot of people liked him at the last one, and I kind of poo-pooed it. So, I was wrong on that one. I didn't think he was going to play great because, the kind of LIV energized fan base is excited with what he's doing, and they should be. He's playing some great stuff. Won twice on the DP World Tour this year, and that PGA Championship performance was excellent. I agree. It doesn't feel like the right course. Typical U.S. Open, definitely. If this was at Winged Foot and you could see Burmish up there with Wolf and Bryson, I totally would get that. Doesn't feel like the right spot at all.
Harris English is also lingering in that same territory, just under 100-1. He's actually at 80 right now. He has not really been playing well at all, but he just kind of shows up at U.S. Opens, and this one plays more to his skill sets than most do, so why not?
And it's in the region he loves. It does feel like a Harris English type of course, and he feels like one of those randoms on the top 10 that we talked about earlier. He fits that group of people. I could see him playing well.
Opened with a 69 here in 2014. Ended up going T48. Had a very poor round 2 and round 3, but he strikes me as a grinder type, and this is going to be a grinding week. That's why I like Brooks in a weird way so much. That if it like you really turn the screws to some of these guys, Brooks is one of the few who just consistently holds up to that pressure. Maybe Harris English can too.
Yeah, I mean, it wouldn't shock me if he was like, the winning DraftKings lineup. He finishes T4, something like that.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm thinking about him. And the last guy I have on my list is Lucas Glover, who is a former U.S. Open winner. And I think that people don't realize how good tee to green he is. That he's amongst the top players in the world tee to green over the past 12 months. It's just, dude can never putt. I bet him at Colonial when he actually gained 7 strokes putting and lost tee to green for the first time all year. Because, of course, that's going to happen. But his skill set is fairways. It's great irons, and he's great around the green. Maybe luck into some putts. Again, I'm probably not going to bet him to win, but could he be the guy who's T9? Yeah, I think that he can.
I agree. This is his area of the country, too. I always like to look at that. He's had some great results kind of in this area, the Carolina area. And, last year, if he was still in that form he was in before, people would be saying this is a perfect spot for him. And it is. I mean, I think look at St. Jude, almost like not the longest course in the world, where he won playoff events. He's beaten these best players before. So if you want to take a chance on somebody who has the balls to kind of go up there and do it, he's one of them.
The only other players that rate out really well in my early modeling, and I mean, this guy he's really the new Luke List because he just pops up every single week and then he misses all the putts and you're like, oh yeah, of course. Aaron Rai should be good here.
He should. He definitely should. He's obviously a horrible putter. And he should have been good at the RBC Canadian when everyone bet him that week. And I understood why, but he just doesn't feel like a player who's capable of kind of doing it on this stage. I maybe a top 20 ceiling I see for him.
Yeah. Other than that, the other names that pop up inside the top 30 right now, Alex Noren, Andrew Putnam. I don't even know if Putnam's in or not. He's just in here right now. Kitayama rates out really well. And that's kind of it. And Robert McIntyre and Davis Riley, weirdly enough, 2 of the past 3 winners on the PGA Tour. Not shocking, because it's a short-term model, that the winners would be up there. But I could see it with Davis Riley, weirdly enough, that he can get scorching hot with his putter. The rest of the game is all over the place. But if he comes in good enough form and he starts making putts, I can see it.
Yeah, maybe. Alex Noren, is he kind of just done now?
I don't think so. I mean, Cuss took him and took the wind out of his sails. If he had a good memorial, that wouldn't shock me.
What about Dietrich? He's been good on firm and fast.
Yeah, I like Dietrich. I bet you he pops up in that apex height too. Dude hits the ball a mile into the sky.
Yeah, yep. Have him at like 13th.
Yeah.
And he's 11 firm and fast.
Is he in?
Yeah, he makes that. He's in the model I have right now. I don't know if he's in the PGA Championship field. It says he's in, but it also has Neiman listed, so I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah, I think that he's in. I think he's high enough in the world rankings to get that done. I could see Dietrich doing well, but again, if we're going to scoff at certain guys not being able to close the door and not win, like a Fleetwood or something like that, I know the odds are going to be different, but he's like the most extreme version of that example.
Yeah, definitely. Just let's see who else got in. I'm trying to think of people who qualified. Jakkar's in. Not to win or anything, but I mean, skill set wise, a typical U.S. Open he'd probably be better for. But he's playing great, says he's healthy. That's why I bet him this week at 150 or whatever. Molinari got in. Yes, some interesting players down the bottom of the board.
Yeah, I think that when I talk it through with Tambo on the DraftKings show, then maybe we can scrounge up a couple of those because it's all really going to depend on pricing. Like I wouldn't imagine Aaron Rai is going to be very expensive. If they have guys in the $5,000 area on DraftKings, he'll be like $6,100.
Yeah, definitely.
And then I would take him because I think that's a great value.
Yeah. Even Eduardo, again, I talked to him today. He said he's his last 3 U.S. Open starts, he's gotten progressively better. And then at Torrey Pines, he was T35. And he said he's feeling great and likes his golf course, likes it playing difficult. So maybe flat min, maybe he can get you a top 25.
Where did he win? I think he won the Hassan II trophy, like the one time I've ever bet on him. I think that was the one in Morocco that he ended up winning. It was like him and Connor Syme like 5 years ago.
I remember that. Yeah.
All right. Thank you for being on the show, man. This is a lot of fun.
Oh, I loved it. It was great. Loved talking it through. Put some takes out there. I hope the testicle thing doesn't get put on that clip that you do promote the show. But I understand if it does.
Sir, the next time you come on the show and you're known as the eunuch Matt Vincenzi, then you're gonna know why.
Please, Wyndham Clark, don't win. I'm gonna get. He makes one birdie on Thursday. I'm gonna get a million tweets about my testicles.
There you go. It's the engagement that you want.
Yeah, there you go. You know what? I already have a couple of young kids, so I don't really need them much anymore anyway.
There you go. Yeah, you can always take those testosterone boosters anyway. Just talk to guys who fight in the UFC who are like over 40. Get Paul, what's it called? The TRT? Get some of that. TRT for life. There you go. You can get like super jacked at the same time. You're pretty jacked already. You get some TRT, lose your balls, get even bigger.
Yeah, you don't need them. And you can always get more jacked, so I'm down for that.
Tell everyone where they can check out your content for the U.S. Open because you're going to have some of the best stuff out there, and I want to make sure that people find it.
Appreciate that. Matt Vincenzi PGA on X. I just recently made an Instagram that nobody follows, and I don't post on it. If you want to check that out, same name. And then Golf WRX is where I write all my stuff. And the Golf WRX YouTube is where my kind of recent interview series has been published to. Had 3 or 4 or 5 of those in the last month or two that have gone really well. So keep a lookout for those as well.
All right, you can follow me at the PME. Reminder to get yourself into those giveaway draws. I mean, 50 grand could be up for grabs, so you probably want to get in that one. But for the U.S. Open specifically from me, Fantasy National memberships, $500 cash, maybe some Underdog bucks coming. The thing that you can do to help out this show the most, use code Mayo at Underdog Fantasy right now. Get a deposit match of up to $250, or deposit bonus, sorry, not a match, a bonus of up to $250. But hell, just fucking throw $10 in there and you'll be good to go. And maybe we have a special announcement coming. Still waiting on that, like I mentioned, but hopefully that is something I can announce on Monday with Feinberg and Cust. And then rate, review, and subscribe to the Pat Mayo Experience audio podcast on Apple. That'll get you ballots. On Spotify, that'll get you ballots. All right. Big week of shows coming for you. I'll be back tomorrow with Keith Stewart. Until then, I'm Pat Mayo. I'll see you next time.
Pat Mayo Experience.
You do look like Devin from The Challenge. You might be. I mean, he's a Boston guy as well. Like, that might be you.
I don't even know what The Challenge is, but I'm gonna go look that up.
Yeah, it's a.
I hear you talk about it before.
I think that Devin's even into like. I think he's sponsored by BetMGM and does a betting show now.
Does he?
I think so. Yeah. He also
Wow,
he also has an OnlyFans where he's like cocks out.
I might have to charge if I do the testicle thing. It'd be a big thing to do for free, so maybe I'll do an OnlyFans for that.
Experience.